We do use chato as our primary storage backend, although anyone who is interested can come along in 333 and develop their own backend and still have the front end work. As far as I know, no one's actually done that, but it's possible. But I think the chato nature of the storage becomes a bit more evident when we start to talk about web services. And this is actually not everybody who's in Triple, but a solid selection of the Triple databases, most of which are members of AgBioData. Okay, I'm actually going to turn this over to Abdullah for about 5 minutes so that he can talk about web services. And he has slides that are in Google.
What's going on?
I don't know. Maybe press present again.
It is presenting. It's disappearing here.
You get the drop down. No.
Oops.
Maybe we can just make this really big.
Yeah, that should work.
All right, there we go.
All right, can everyone see this?
Yes.
Okay. So I'll talk a little bit about the new addition to 333, and that's Triple Web Services. A quick overview of what Triple Web Services do. They provide an API that is based on the RESTful concept. It allows programmers to access data, doesn't matter what kind of language you use, whether it's PHP, Python, or any other language. And for end users, it also provides a user interface that allows triple sites to connect to each other and actually ask for data from each other. So Triple was presented with multiple problems, and one of which is that it wants to share data between those databases, all the triple sites. It needed to do it in a way that is identifiable. So it decided to define content types. The data had to also be discoverable. So most APIs, when you access the API, you need to know some sort of information about the entity you're trying to access. But it turns out there is an industry standard that allows you to discover what kind of data the API provides in a way that also machines understand, not just humans. And finally, it needed to solve the problem of searching. How would you search using only links? So for the first problem, sharing the data between databases, it created an API, a RESTful API, that allows programs to read, create, update, and delete from any triple site. Currently, we only provide read access, and that's because the authentication system is not complete for the RESTful API, but once that's available, other applications will also be able to create, update, and delete on top of just reading. Triple also provides a built-in UI that allows you to easily just add a new site, any other triple site, to your database and say, I want this kind of information to come from that site. And it will, every time someone visits that page, pull updated information from the other site you added. Next, it needed to define content types. Most applications will need to know that this is, for example, a sequence or a common name. Sometimes labels differ. In our website, we could call it common name. Someone else would be calling it commonly known as, so on and so forth. However, there is one way, a machine understandable way, to share what this information is. And Triple decided to use controlled vocabulary for that. For this particular example, this SIO ontology defines what common name is. So what the machine reads is SIO, whatever that accession number is, and understands that this is exactly what I want. I don't need to know what humans call it. And for the discovering that part, there is a thing called JSON linked data. And what that does is provide a way for you to know what other entities are linked to this particular entity, let's say it's an organism, there is a context that that triple provides that when expanded will tell you that this has mRNAs associated with it, it has genes associated with it, it has publications and analyses associated with it. And you'll be able to traverse the entire site completely using a program. That changed, yes. And finally, our part of discoverable data too is that Triple automatically takes all of the way you organize your data, all of the way you display your data on your site, and associates it with controlled vocabulary. So technically, if you're using Triple, you get discoverable data for free. You don't have to do any extra work. You don't have to do any extra programming. And for searching, Triple defines a certain structure for your URLs, for the API URLs, that allows you to search not only records themselves, but also linked records. So for example, if you want a specific organism, you just pass in the genus, and you can add and species to it, and specify what the genus, what the species are, and it will give you anything it knows about that. It also allows you to get the linked records. In this case, we wanted mRNA sequences for this particular organism, so we said we want mRNA records, and where the organism genus is Oriza. And the same thing for the species. And that way we can get all the mRNA records. But it also allows us to search even more complicated ways, like making sure that the common name contains the word walnut rather than just an exact match. There's a lot more about this in the documentation that I linked to here. So as a conclusion, we discussed that Triple enables developers to retrieve data from databases. Doesn't matter the programming language you use. And by using JSON linked data, Triple makes the entire database discoverable and navigable. That's a word, right?
Yes, absolutely.
It also provides a built-in client that comes with Triple that allows you to pull data from other databases completely using the UI and without any programming experience. And finally, data is searchable using a URL-based query system, and the documentation for that can be found here. Any questions?
All right, well, if you guys come up with any, we can save them to the end as well. I'm gonna adjust course a little bit and go back to my presentation and talk about some other ways that we can do data exchange, because I've been thinking a little bit more broadly. Like web services is amazing, but I think there's other things we can do that are also exciting. And why is web services not the end all and the be all? So it's great if we have two Triple databases that want to talk to each other and they both have the same web services structured the same way, and you know, that's going to work out great. But this is going to be pretty difficult to implement for non-Triple databases. You're going to have to map your backend storage onto either your own web services that then we have to figure out how to use, or onto like our web services structure, which would be more interoperable, but probably more of a pain for other databases. So that's one big drawback. Another drawback is that we have really slow searching on our web services. So if you do ask for like every single gene from an organism with the common name walnut on the hardware genomics site, you're going to be waiting a while. And that's not optimal. Also, it's very nice for computers and developers who write code, but is not particularly useful for users directly. Because you do, even though it's linked and you can kind of learn it, and you can kind of, it's an intimidating format to look at and to understand, and most biologists don't want to really deal with it. And I have an example over here This is also very structurally dependent on your triple site. So I was like following the manual to try to get our web services to make sure they were working. And I put mRNA in and it said, oh, invalid content type. And what I realized is that we had named our content type mRNA-peptide, whereas most people have named their content type mRNA. So it's these type of gotchas that if you're a developer, you can discover all of these content types and figure it out. But if you're not a developer, this is just going to be super confusing. Yeah, so those are kind of the main drawbacks. And we thought that actually this was a great idea that Abdullah had. Gosh, it's probably been a year and a half ago. It's been a while. So we were working on Elasticsearch. Ming Chen was a PhD student in my program, and he started and he was like, Elasticsearch is really cool. I think it's going to be way faster than the Drupal search. Let's give it a try. And so we implemented it, and it's a really nice open source search engine. It's built on top of Lucene, and it provides JSON structure to your indexes. It's super fast. It can handle lots of very large volumes of data, very scalable, which we thought was important, sorts by relevance to search terms, and it's very well documented and tested. So we like it a lot. So what we did was write a triple module that brings Elasticsearch into your triple site. It's very user-friendly to index large genomic data. It provides these default indices that work out of the box, so you don't necessarily have to do a lot of customization. However, if you want to do customization, it is very, very customizable, and administrators can really get in there and tweak it and make it work the way they want it to. So this is our first foray into Elasticsearch was just, can we search our whole site? That seems like something that you want for your site. And can we do it quickly? And so here's an example. When you go to Hardwood Genomics and type in Fraxinus, it does give you lots of results, 15,000 plus, and it also gives you this filter by category. So you can filter down to the type of data that you're looking for, which is actually really, really nice to be able to do. And we also implemented an administrative interface. And this is also like, if you're not a triple database and you're interested in Elasticsearch, you can still do all of these things. You'll just have to follow like the Elasticsearch documentation. But we really thought it would be useful inside the triple ecosystem to have these administrative controls right there in your site. So you can describe your local Elasticsearch server and get it set up. You can create indices, specific things that you know that you want to index and have them structured the way you want them structured. If you are indexing things, it will give you progress bars. Depending on, here we're indexing 5.8 million items. It's going to take 33 days, so it's not necessarily super fast. Depending on how much you're trying to re-index, it's probably a bit better to, as you're adding data, you're just going to index the things that you're adding instead of indexing from scratch. So the first time you index, it's going to take quite some time.
This is actually all this much faster than that now.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is, our first forays into this. It can definitely be much faster. And this is one of my favorite parts. You can go through all of your triple fields, which are basically individual pieces of content, and you can decide if they're high priority for indexing, low priority, or do not index. And that just means if your indexing is being slow, you can put high priority on things that you think people are really going to want to search, lower priority on things that you definitely want to be indexed eventually, but are not as searchable, and then do not search on things like sequence fields. Like, I don't want Elasticsearch spending all its time trying to index ACTs and Gs or amino acid sequences, because that's not the type of search we're doing here. So I can turn off all those fields and prevent those from cluttering up my Elasticsearch index, which is nice. But then I can't remember who, it might have been Abdullah who originally had this idea. I think it was. He was telling me Elasticsearch comes with this really nice feature out of the box that you can just expose your index online. And then if someone else has an Elasticsearch server, they can search your index over the internet. So this kind of, and it search as a service is the idea. And we thought, this could be really powerful for community databases that need to be able to share data and especially present it in a meaningful view to their users. So in the example I'm going to show you, we have Hardwood Genomics, Citrus Genome Database, and Tree Genes. We all have Elasticsearch servers, and they're all exposed to the internet. and I know about them all. So if you come to Hardwood Genomics, I can, and go to our search page, I can use the service to query all 3 of these databases and return results back to my users, which is actually really, turns out to be a very nice way to get multiple results to your users from all these different databases. We're calling it cross-site search. So this is actually, I will show you a live demo here. Put your money where your mouth is on the live demo, right? We're pretty proud of it. So we put a big button right in the middle of our homepage, or you can find it under tools for cross-site search. These are the only 3 triple sites that have this working, but we're hoping some more sites will get on board. So I think if I put ASH, I think there are results in all 3. So it's gonna say, hey, Hardwood Genomics, we know about 158,000 things that have ASH in them. If I keep scrolling down, it says, oh, Citrus Genome Database, we actually have 3 publications with the word ASH. And it is giving you like a little search preview of that keyword, so you can determine if you really want to click on it. And Tree Genes, which is another tree database, pulls up publications and some other different types of project. So again, if you're a user, this is a nice way to see from your community database, what does this database have, but what other databases are out there that might have information that I care about for my keywords. I get rid of that, go back to the slides. So this is really speaking to the findable part of the FAIR principles. It's relatively quick to implement across online websites or storage backends. This is not triple dependent. This could definitely be set up in other systems. Like I said, the indexing can take some time. I am going to volunteer Abdullah's time. If you guys have questions or want help tweaking Elasticsearch and making it work the way you want to, we've spent 1.5 years on this. I feel like we've got a lot of in-house expertise on that. So definitely something I think people should consider. One of the big limitations right now is that the data is not structured in a way that we can do a lot with it, right? Like it's not interoperable, it's not reusable if I can't take those results from those other sites, pull them, aggregate them, and do something with them. So, but I think that's actually possible. Triple Elasticsearch stores tokenized information free of HTML clutter. So we do have tokenized bits of data that we can get at. This is going to enable faceted searching and filtering of search results. I already showed you this on our main search page, where it gives you a filter by category, and you can filter by like the type of item. We're gonna be able to do this for cross-site searching between triple sites. And the reason we can do it between triple sites is because we have an expected structure that we can work with. This becomes a lot more difficult if somebody's not in triple. So we're working, it's only available for internal search right now, but we're hoping to implement it for cross-site search. I should also say, if you're a triple listener, this will only work if you're in triple 3. Triple 2 will work with cross-site search. You just will not get, we won't be able to help you with the categorization and the faceted search. But this opens a really interesting possibility. If we have a common web services API or schema.org, we could use that to build smarter structured searching across all of our sites, whether you're triple or something else. And so I think there's a lot of interest, hopefully in this group and more broadly, to develop some of these structured data mechanisms. And that would move us from not just being findable, but also to being interoperable and reusable with our data. So this is not an idea that I really came up with out of the blue. It's something that we experience with Google every day. And so this is just sort of, I Googled boots, I think. And so, oh, I don't know how to make, I don't know if I can move this thing. Anyway, well, you guys have probably seen plenty of Google results. So if it's a structured data source that it can understand at the top, it says, look at all these places on the internet that they have structure and I know what's going on here. It's a company selling a boot and I know the price and I've got user ratings, and you can do the faceted search at the top. You can pick men, women, different brands. So this is structured text that Google has been able to turn into a really nice interface. Whereas at the bottom, it's more like, here are things that I know about on the internet that are indexed, and they have the keywords you're interested in, but I don't have structure for them. You have to click through and figure out what you want, and if this is of interest to you. So I kind of envision this as a nice solution for the biological community, because some of us will have the time and money and effort to put forth to create structured data, and some of us might not. There are databases that might not ever get to that point, and data resources out there that no one's going to have the time and effort to do that. But it's nice if you can still return the results, and you can still say, hey, there's this data set out there. We can find it for you. We can point you to it online, but we can't structure it. We can't help you, put it into a Galaxy workflow or something, because we don't have any structure, but it's out there. You at least know about it. So that's why I kind of think it's the best of both worlds. If you can get some that are structured, but you don't lose the unstructured data. Sorry, I keep clicking the space bar. It mutes me. Yeah, so and that would be once we have, and we can do this now within the triple ecosystem, not yet outside the triple ecosystem, but you can take data from your searches, you can place it into these collections that are owned by the individual user and their user account. These collections can be downloaded as FASTA files or VCF files. The collections can also be sent to Galaxy workflows for analysis. So long-term goal would be like, okay, I'm going to search for kinases. I can gather all of the kinase genes from hardwood genomics, citrus genome database, and tree genes, put them all into a single collection, and then go do an analysis on them. So that's kind of the long-term dream. I had pitched for AgBioData. Most people here are probably members. I'm representing the data sharing working group. It says the data sharing using web services working group, but since I'm pitching that we can use more than just web services, I'm going to lobby that we just shorten it to the data sharing working group. And we would love to have new members or anyone who's interested. The goals we have are to identify the current methods of data exchange within and across all of our databases, explore all the community opinions on data sharing needs and priorities, because there are a lot of them, identify partners with interest and throughput to actually implement concrete examples, develop recommended best practices for data exchange, and promote best practices for that data exchange. Once we come up with them, we will promote them. So if the grant gets funded, these are the types of activities that we want to do, and if the grant doesn't get funded, these are the types of activities we want to do. So hopefully money will make it go better, though. We did have a really nice in-person meeting at the Plant Animal Genome Conference in January. I thought I'd give you guys a very brief update of what we talked about. We have lots of methods of sharing data, but few are commonly used across many resources. People mention the BRAPI API. Both Solr and Elasticsearch are in use by various resources. Lots of sites have FTP files, flat files available. Bioschema is very promising, but needs additional structure and maybe a little bit more love to make it fit all of our needs. And many sites have custom-built APIs. As far as needs and priorities, we had only 8 people. We came up with more needs and priorities than there were people in the groups. So I think that tells you that there's a lot of work to do in this area. We highlighted increased discoverability and findability of services. For example, like if you're on hardwood genomics, it may not be clear that we have web services unless you happen to know we're a triple website and you happen to know where the triple manual is. So things like that we could do better. Connecting among different data types is very challenging. People structure the same types of data in very different ways, which makes it difficult to build these communication links. We have both a problem with lack of standards and too many standards. So both ends of the problem there. Standards are difficult to validate. So if we have validation scripts, that could be helpful. Phenotypes are highlighted as something we could use a lot more work on, and pan-genome support, moving between assemblies, between gene IDs, locations. That's something we're all going to have to deal with sooner rather than later. And we really talked a lot about enriching US to Europe to other nation collaborations and crosstalk. If we're all developing independent platforms in our own individual countries, that's not great for the international scientific community. But everybody's pretty excited about JSON LD. That was a common convergence point. And this is kind of, I think I mostly went over all of this, but the first thing we want to do is to develop a survey for everyone and AgBioData to kind of work on making sure we have a full understanding of all the needs and priorities, and also rankings of what we think we should start on first. Get those recommended best practices up. Try to incorporate as many people in the conversation as possible. So even people outside of AgBioData, I try to encourage them to join, and if they won't join, maybe we could still get them to take the survey. We'll encourage use of the recommended best practices, but one of the best ways to do this is by developing demonstrations and proof of concept data sharing examples. And hopefully we can identify a set of partners with the interest to actually implement some concrete examples. So everyone should consider joining this working group, because we communicate very well with each other. That's our specialty. It's okay to be in more than one group. I wanted to point that out too. I think this is a pretty new group, but it's important, and hopefully we'll have some exciting things to come. Lots of people worked on this, so I want to thank them, but also highlight the 8 people. I think I got most everyone who was there in a PAG and helped come up with this list of priorities and needs. So thank you to all of them. Can I take any questions?
I have a question for Abdullah.
Okay.
I have just a comment and a question. We're ready. First off, this is both of these presentations are great. I appreciate them. So I guess my first comment is you have all these common search APIs, both the triple one, and then you have the additional Elasticsearch one, and probably some other ones that are not quite sure that maybe you missed. But one of the things I was thinking is it makes sense to have like a central beacon for these. Like if your triple sites are able to call a central server and have that advertise that you're an endpoint that has data available and some metadata about you, that would be fairly low-hanging fruit and might solve a lot of these problems about discoverability. So, because I think
that's exactly what I suggested a year ago.
We did put this in a proposal that was not funded. I think people are a little reluctant to be the maintainers of the central repository. Like, we're all having a hard enough time like maintaining our own resources. But I mean, I completely agree that what we need is something like a service, and that has come up multiple times. And I would just like to see it be broader than triple. I think that's really the goal that we should be. I mean, triple is great and wonderful, and I love all of our colleagues, but I feel like there's just a much wider world of data out there. So maybe like within our triple databases is like where we start. Yeah.
I think, I mean, I guess the advantage of just doing triple, that kind of leads into my second question, is that I know I can, there's a set number of endpoints for it. And I think it might be a good thing if you're talking about doing proof of concepts and demos. It'd be pretty low-hanging fruit to do. It shouldn't be implementation hard. It wouldn't be that. Implementation-wise, it wouldn't be that hard. You would need something centralized, but technically, it shouldn't be a hard problem. But anyway, that's just my comment, and hopefully there'll be something easy to do that is a prototype. My second is more of a question. You have I think you were talking about different APIs, and I was thinking like, I know like another 3 or 4 good standard APIs that could be used. You could have a Swagger open API front end, and then do whatever you want with Elasticsearch or triple on the back end. Then I was thinking triple is a standard. I mean, if you have 30 sites all using the same API, that in and of itself is a wonderful standard that maybe other people should be conforming to, not the other way around.
Right.
And I think it makes a lot of sense to say this is the triple API standard, and this is the model comes out of that. And so, I mean, it'd be easy to put my Apollo hat on or my Monarch or my Alliance hat on to say, oh, this is a triple API. There's tools out, for it already, because triple uses it. It would be, I don't know, what I'm saying? Like, you have an implementation, you have multiple, large community using it. I think that's good enough, so long as you have a way to publish that API easily. You can have like an open, using something like Open API or Swagger might help tooling if I have to do it in JV or in Java or in JavaScript or some other library not readily supported. But I guess I'm saying is I think you're actually there, and maybe it's just a matter of publicizing or those APIs. But I may not have the best grasp of what's in that API, so maybe you can answer that a little more.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we've heard a few complaints about is that how chato-centric, which I actually think is an advantage because there are people using chato that aren't using triple, but some people really just don't like chato and don't like the way that it structures the data and kind of forces you to interact with the data. I think, it's great to hear that other people would be supportive of maybe using it as a standard. And that's exactly the kind of thing I hope this working group kind of talks about. I don't know. Do you want to? Yeah, making it more easy to learn about the API and maybe map to it is definitely a worthy goal, for sure.
This is Pankaj here from Oregon State, and I have a question about, do you know the top 10 or 20 questions that your users are interested in looking for to get the answers before we start venturing into a whole big scale integration of indexes and searches that is coming up?
I mean, I have guesses. I have good guesses from the people that I talk to and the surveys that we've done. But I feel like there's also a lot of, it's really interesting. Like, I meet graduate students all the time that have some really interesting project and they're trying to get at the data in some way that I've never really thought about. So I do think that thinking broadly is helpful. But yeah, a lot of it is I want to search by gene function, and I want to download all the genes with that gene function, or I want to download all the genes with that PFAM. That tends to be a primary one, but I'm a very gene-centric database, whereas we have other databases that are very variant-centric, like Lacey Ann Sanderson's NoPulse is very much about genotyping data. So I think her use cases are going to be different, but she's still in triple. I don't know if that helps to answer your question, but I think for each individual triple database you ask that question to, you might get a slightly different answer. There's a big breeding push in triple, so they're going to have different use cases than we are.
I agree with your assessment on that side, but I think that's why many of us are saying that there is a diversity of data structure, database schemas, and portals, and how you query, and the way that even the indexes are being prepared for solar searches or something like that. But there's such a diversity. The only connecting points that we've always figured out over the last 15 years is if there are some integration of different levels of ontologies, then at least there is some structure in the data and some sensible querying that can be done to help the biologist. Otherwise, it's a total chaos, as we understand. We want to develop new and interesting tools, but most of them are limited to browsing, but not helping the users analyze the data. And I think that we need to think differently moving in that direction. But not everybody's even though we have the ontologies, but not everybody's integrating those data sets. And that's one of the biggest bottlenecks we've figured out.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the triple web services are extremely ontology driven, as Abdullah mentioned. Everything has to have an ontology term. And we have bundles that ship with triple. So we have kind of content types that have defined ontology terms for the most common types of data that ship with triple, simply so that we're all using the same ontology term for gene, and we're all using the same ontology term for mRNA. And we're all using, but even things like Abdullah was highlighting, name, let's all use it. So we're trying to corral everybody into an ontology-based system on the web services side. And I think we can get a lot of that benefit on the search side if we have structured data. But yeah, convincing everybody to get ontology terms applied to all of their data sets is definitely a huge hill to climb. We're not 100% there, even within our own database, as far as like all of the values, like plant tissues and plant developmental stages for our SRA stuff. We house it, but we don't do a great job of going in and ontology tagging it. So there's definitely some manual work that has to go on, and we've got to continue to promote that.
Yeah, and we've been in that situation for a long time, and I think what we've done is going up into the ladder, saying as and when the data is being produced, if you integrate those structures and data standards at that level, then downstream effort is less in curation and managing. Plus, it actually helps the biologists in getting what they want, because in the end, it's the biologists who are driving these resources, not the bioinformatics people.
Right.
And so it's for their own benefit. And so I think we need to consider about that. And if we are not using ontologies or not integrating ontologies upfront in our data collection points, we need to make a little bit more emphasis on that side. That's my advice.
And I think, preaching to the choir here, but I think AgBioData is a pretty powerful group and mechanism for that, because we highlighted in setting up the data sharing working group that we wanted to have cross membership with the ontology working group and the metadata working group to make sure that we are getting a lot of synergy between all three of those, because it only works if we're all pulling in the same direction. So that's definitely a priority.
Is someone talking that I can't hear? Or
I just had a question for Abdullah, but if you have one, go ahead.
No. Go ahead, Ethy. Your turn.
So I wondered if you can query the triple REST API to find out what commands have been implemented and what commands, or simply what commands are available.
I don't think that's possible, but you can query it to see what types of entities are available. Like there's this entry point, where you get all types of contents and what other commands there are, as you described them, what other URLs can you click on or visit to display more information about each content type.
Okay, that was going to be my second question.
I think if I can remember the URL, I can pull it up. As a
Web-services.
Web-services. Do you have to have version?
No, content, which is the name of the service, and then v0.1.
Yeah, there we go. So this would be the example from Hardwoods, where the entry point is just telling you what are the different content types that I have. So I have analysis collections, I have biological sample collections, I have blast annotation collections. So if you're a triple person, some of these probably look more sensible than if you're not a triple person. But that's what we mean by like discoverability. And then you could click on one of them and start drilling down. This is the linked data part of the JSON LD. So that's the discoverability part. I think, the other structuring, you have to go to the triple manual to figure out how the API works.
Yeah.
The web service works, yeah.
I'm not sure if it would be worth the effort to add that or not, because I guess you could, if you're querying some new site that you weren't aware of exactly where they are, it comes back with a 404 or something, then, well, okay, that command's not been implemented.
Right. Yeah. That could actually be really helpful.
I think Triple does that. In terms of proper HTTP responses, it should probably do that. Okay. I haven't tested it, but it's part of Triple, so Drupal, so it should do it automatically.
Okay, let me test that.
Does the JSON LD have, like, I brought up Swagger to OpenAPI. I can't remember if they're JSON LD compliant. I don't think so, but there's probably some provider that will auto annotate or show you what's available on a web page based on those JSON LD results, right?
There are JSON LD clients. There are plenty of them. There's in fact a JSON LD website that has, I think, even a marketplace for this stuff to just parse it through linked data structures.
Yeah, I don't know. So Steven implemented, I don't know who implemented most of this.
Steven and Shauna.
Stephen and Shauna, yeah, and I think they had a plan for something like that at some point. I don't know which service they were going to use. That may be in the works. But certainly, if you have specific interest, you can ping Stephen on the issue queue or us, and we'll look into it more. I think it's a great idea. I think we just haven't gotten to it yet.
Yeah, and as you know, then there may indeed be tools that do this, so that you don't need to implement it. So that's
Right.
worth exploring.
Hey Meg, do you currently have a working group schedule going? Are you is this group meeting regularly, or was it PAG and then we'll see what the grant does?
Yeah, it was definitely a PAG, and we'll see what the grant does. Although I think it's probably an important enough topic that even if the grant doesn't get funded, we should probably get something going.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm not sure if the other working groups have independent meetings that are successful, but yeah, it might be worth getting something going.
This is Pankaj again. One quick question. What are the major bottlenecks you envision going forward?
I think it just takes, it's just getting people excited about this, and more than that, it's having the time and the effort to make it a focus for a database. I think a lot of times we're outward facing, we're looking at our users and our consumers, and we're not necessarily thinking about data exchange with each other. So I foresee that as a barrier. Like, I think we all pay a lot of lip service to it, but is it actually something that we have the time and throughput to implement? Especially these best practices and working examples for the community. We really are going to have to find people who are passionate about this. Technical hurdles, what are your thoughts?
I think you just hit the nail in the head, is because everybody has their own predetermined set of deliverables and limited resources. They may not have the bandwidth to contribute on some of these new initiatives.
Yeah.
So one way would be is to put some incentives on the table for them, either funding or co-funding or some personnel time to get them motivated on going in this direction.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that there's some reasonable, I think it's reasonable to think that the NSF cyber infrastructure community cares about this sort of thing. I mean, web services and structured data is not the most innovative. You have to tie it back to like interesting biological insights is what that is the message we have gotten very strongly in the past year. But I think there's still potential there to find the support to get things done. And I think, you know, the federal agencies are funding so much science, and they want to see it being reproducible and accessible. And these are the types of things they're going to have to fund to make that happen. And I think they know that. So getting together the right group of people, and yeah, I love the idea of community-wide incentives. And I tell my department head all the time, carrots, not sticks. So I'm very much like carrots, give us carrots, we'll do whatever you want. So yeah, so I like the idea of funding as a carrot to get people engaged.
Yeah, Meg, this is Gerard Lazo. Cynthia Parr and I are part of a working group on the federal side working for database hosting. And a lot of the things that you discussed today are in line with that. So perhaps I should invite you to talk in one of our meetings, or we'll get some discussions going on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like we've been very inward triple focused for a while, but starting to get to the point where we can really think more broadly. So that would be fantastic.
Yeah, there's also a number of people within the federal group that are using the triple, or beginning to use the triple environment. So this would actually fold in well with what you're doing.
Excellent.
I'm just sort of jealous, those of us not in triple, you know.
Triple comes with its own challenges. You can just call Effie. No, or us. I mean, it's the ecosystem to get into it is a ton of work. It's, it's still a developing standard. We have too few programmers. We've got, a lot of just, so I think there are huge advantages, but I think it's still a learning curve. It's still a hill to climb. So I don't want to oversell it, but it is, if we can get it where we want it in the next few years, being in Triple is going to make so much sense because you're going to get so much for free, right? It's going to build your web services for you. It's going to enable all your content permission handling is going to be handled for you. It's going to do so much out of the box that you won't have to program. It's going to be amazing. And it mostly does that now. It's just harder than it should be.
Yeah, and so people developing new databases, like the cannabis database people, and that sort of thing, they're going to have a real advantage. But for those of us, I mean, I just can't see a way that we could ever switch. Gosh.
Jill Wegerson switched Tree Genes over from, she was in kind of a hybrid, I think mostly to Django, maybe, but she switched over, so she probably would have some comments about that. And it was difficult, but they managed to do it, and it was a very large database with many different data types, and it took some dedicated funding for about a year and a half, 2 years. But
yeah, I would say it took about probably a little over 2 years. And we're still moving certain components that are custom and things like that. And part of that was moving into 333 while it was still coming into development and things were being worked out. But we're much happier after the move overall. So it's been worth it because we were in a completely custom solution before that was even hard to maintain. So there's challenges, but it is doable.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very challenging, particularly for I think Tree Genes is one of the older databases too, isn't it? From the 90s?
Yeah.
Yeah, because, a lot of some of the data just, the newer databases don't deal with. There's some data types. How many gels or
right.
people store anymore. So I think that we will continue to have to find ways to work with custom built databases. And there may be, all kinds of other reasons that people may choose to be custom or to go with a different sort of framework.
Yeah, because for those of you that don't know, Ethy works in a MariaDB in our weird database, and then also in Peanutbase, which is a chato triple database, right?
Yeah. So I see both worlds.
Yeah.
I see the importance of both worlds.
Jill, so this is Tanner Shan. I was wondering, you mentioned it took 2 years for you to switch to Triple. How many developers and curators were involved in that effort?
We had about 3 total, kind of and if you added everybody's up in terms of partial time and combinations of undergraduates and partial grad students. So probably that equals about 3-ish full-time people.
Thanks.
Any more questions? That was a fantastic presentation, you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Well, feel free to follow up. Anybody on the call who wants to email us or get help with Elasticsearch or web services, we are very happy to help.
Wonderful, wonderful.
And join the working group. It's going to be the best one. After recruit.
Well, and next month you'll hear about the curation, the second best group.
That's okay. We can all claim to be the best. It's fine.
Okay, any other comments or thoughts or announcements or anything? Well, then let's thank our speakers again and have a good month.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Okay, bye, everybody.
Bye.